Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're concluding our study of Tamar today, in our larger study of the matriarchs, the women that we get to know in the book of Genesis. And as we left Tamar yesterday, we see that Judah, much like his mm, father and his grandfather and his aunt, he's a woman, or excuse me, he's a man, excuse me, who is practiced at the art of deception. But he's going to meet someone who is also practiced at the art of deception. He's lost two sons because of their evilness, but God has taken their lives. But he associates their loss of life to the woman he purchased, paid the bride price for, Tamar. And she is owed a husband who will give her children. Uh, and and he has no intention of sending his third son into her. So this is what happens. Genesis 38, verse 12. After a considerable time, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. And when the time of mourning had ended, Judah went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite. And it was told to Tamar, Behold, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear sheep. So she removed her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, wrapped herself, sat in the gateway of Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah had grown up, and she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, because of the veil she was wearing. So he turned to her by the road and said, Here now, let me come in to you. For he did not know she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What will you give me, that you may come in to me? And he said, Therefore, I will send you a kid from the flock. And she said, Moreover, Will you give me a pledge until you send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give you? And she said to him, Your seal, your cord, and the staff that is in your hand. So he gave them to her, and went into her, and she conceived by him. She arose and departed, removed the veil, and put on her widow's garments again. This is the fifth of sixth, maybe seven, probably seven times in the book of Genesis that we have a case of mistaken identity. We've had Sarah mistaken as, presented as the sister of Abraham twice. We have Rebecca presented as the sister of Isaac once. That's three. Jacob and Esau. That's four. Leah and Rachel is five. One, two, three, four. Yeah, Leah and Rachel is five. Tamar is six, and Joseph is seven. So we have these seven cases of mistaken identity and nefarious mistaken identity in the book of Genesis. Mistaken identity used in a nefarious way. And this is happening here. It's genius what she does. She understands. She's still wearing her widow's garment. She has no hope of having a husband, of having a family. She's stuck in her father's household in a case of perpetual limbo because Jacob is afraid. Now, Jacob himself is a widow. That's clear from the very beginning. So she's not taking another woman's husband, and he is not committing an act of adultery, although he is committing an act of fornication because it's fornication to go into a prostitute. And evidently, he desires to be with this woman that he meets on the way because he gives her everything. She says he says he'll pay basically the standard price for a prostitute, which is a lamb or a kid, a young goat. And she says, "Okay, but I need a pledge. You don't have it. So what do I get as collateral till you give give me the price?" And and uh, and so he says, "What do you want?" And she says, "I want your cell phone. I want your driver's license, and I want your social security card. And that's what he gave to her. Everything that identified him as himself, everything that he carried on his person that identified him as him, he said, yes, here, take it. And so they have intercourse, and she conceives. She goes back home to her father, takes off the veil, puts on her widow's garb again, and then Judah sends a kid by his friend the Adulamite so that he can get his stuff back and no one can find her. Where's the temple prostitute who was by the road to deny him? And they said, there's been no temple prostitute here. So he returned to Judah and said, I didn't find her. Furthermore, the men of the place said, there has been no temple prostitute. And Judah said, let her keep them, lest we become a laughingstock. After all, I sent this kid, but you did not find her. So Judah knows something bad has happened. Time passes, and someone shows up and says, hey, your daughter-in-law, the one that's at her home, the one that you neglected, the one that you left in limbo, guess what? She's pregnant. And Judah said, she's going to have to die. Bring her out and let her be burned. She is with child by harlotry. It was while she was being brought out that she sent to her father-in-law, saying, I am with child by the man to whom these things belong. And she said, please examine them and see whose signet ring and cords and staff are these. And Judah, recognizing them, said, she is more righteous than I, inasmuch that I did not give her my son, give her to my son Shelah. And then he did not have relations with her again. And it was about the time she was giving birth that there were twins in her womb. It took place while she was giving birth. One put out a hand. The midwife took it and tied a scarlet thread, saying, this one came out first. But it came out that she drew his hand back, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. So he was named Perez. And afterward, his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread, and his hand was named Zerah. So we have the whole theme of supplanting again in this story. We've had that over and over again. She's just such a genius. And now she manages this and checkmates her father-in-law. And he admits it to everybody. And he says, she's more righteous than I am. This is my fault. She's right. I'm wrong. She's more righteous than I am. And the text is clear. He had no more relations with her. It wouldn't have been right. But these two children are born, and they're his sons, and he raises them as his sons. And Perez, the one that made a breach for himself, becomes a part of the lineage of Jesus. And as we said, Tamar is the only woman from the book of Genesis mentioned in the lineage of Jesus in the Gospels, and she is. She's an important person in the book of Genesis that we do not pay enough attention to. She's a foreigner, and certainly is unconventional the way she finds a way to become a mother. It's not a heartwarming story, not the subject of a Norman Rockwell painting or an episode of the Waltons, not at all. Something that you'd see on one of these more obscure cable channels, perhaps. But it's there. And not only is it there, it's in the lineage of Jesus, and she's given her name, she's named in the book of Matthew, chapter 1, so that we will not forget her story. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me for another, what is now nearly 10 good minutes with the Word. We have one more woman that we want to look at in the book of Genesis. We'll talk about her next time. Thank you for joining me.